recording live in the Voodoo Lounge at the world headquarters of Dine, Drink, Travel. This is the premiere episode of Dine, Drink, Vegas, a podcast for everybody stuck at home but wishing they were in the land of neon signs and bad decisions. I am your host, John, aka the Baller on a Budget, and in episode number 1, we bring to you a deep dive on the El Cortez Hotel in downtown. We also update you on some news we've gotten from various sources all around Las Vegas, updates on what's happening on our YouTube channel, and of course, our drink of the day. And now, let me introduce to you the founder of Dine, Drink, Travel, and Dine, Drink, Vegas, the high roller of the high plains, the Duke of the Blackjack Room, the man who's always waiting for his limo to arrive, Bill. Come on in, Bill.
Pinkies up, because of course when I go to Las Vegas, I want to live a much nicer life than I do when I'm at home doing my job.
And I get that. It's just I live a few tax brackets south of you, so I've usually got to do things on a budget. But anything to get us out of the desert reaches of far west Texas to someplace where the lights are pretty and my decisions are ugly, it's a pretty good time.
Well, and your decision should match your face, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
So this is our first episode. Bill, you started Dine, Drink, Travel and Dine, Drink, Vegas. So podcast is going to be very different for us. This is our first one. But this all started with a YouTube channel. So before we get into today's content, do you want to talk about your goal for the YouTube videos that we do and what sets us apart? And then we'll get into what we want to do with this podcast.
So I got frustrated when I first started traveling, whether it was the cruises I take or my trips to Las Vegas or whatever. And I'd want to find information about where I was going, but everybody'd want to do these like 30-minute long or 40-minute long videos that covered every possible thing. And I just wanted to know, like, hey, is that a room I want to stay in? Or what are my menu choices at that restaurant or whatever? So on the Dine, Drink, Travel Vegas YouTube channel, what we tend to do most of the time is 5 or 10-minute videos which focus a specific question. What does this restaurant look like? Is this a good place to go have a drink at a rooftop bar? What do the rooms look like at this hotel? That sort of thing. Right,
and I think that's a great niche in the Vegas market because, number one, it serves a need for people who want to get in and out quick. And number two, let's face it, we don't look like Norma or Ruby. Nobody wants to see our faces on videos for 20 or 30 minutes.
I mean, if you watch the channel, you'll notice our faces are almost never on the videos unless one of us is filming after we've both already been Vegasing for a couple of days.
Yeah, pretty much that's a public service. So the podcast for us, I think, is going to be a deep dive. And I tend to listen to more Vegas podcasts than you do. There's many of them that I love. Vital Vegas, whenever Scott gets around to recording one. If you ever hear this, Scott, I'm a huge fan. On the corner of Main Street, which is down by the Plaza, 360 Vegas, which is a great podcast, Food and Loathing in Vegas, which is by the folks that do the Neon Feast app, talking about restaurants. I love all those podcasts, but most of them are from the point of view of people who live in Vegas and often work in the industry. And we wanted to make a podcast for travelers.
We do, although I want to go back for just a second. I love On the Corner of Main Street because a lot of times they capture former Mayor Goodman talking. It is clear that Mayor Goodman does not give the north end of a southbound rat about much of anything. He's going to say what he's going to say, and he's funny. I like listening to that guy. But yeah, sure. There needs to be something explaining Vegas to people who haven't been there much before or who are looking for the next thing, even if they have been. And you and I have been a ton. My first trip was Martin Luther King Day weekend in 2005. And over the course of the last 18 years, I bet I've been 50 times.
Yeah, and I'm less experienced than you. My first trip was with you and our buddy Mike back in 2017 in the summer. And I've probably been a dozen times.
Did anything unfortunate happen on that trip?
That's a story for another podcast.
Okay.
We're going to get into our first Vegas experiences in a later episode. But you get to go more often, and you've been going for more years. But at this point, even I've got a pretty good feel. But we're still coming at this as tourists. Those podcasts where people have inside baseball are great. But we wanted to have a tourist-friendly podcast because we're looking at this the way we think the audience we hope we build also is going to look at it.
Absolutely. You've got 3 days in Vegas or however much time it is in Vegas, and you want to live just for a little while, a little bit of a different life than you normally do. I think you're the one who said it at some point. Vegas is essentially the holodeck. It can be anything you want it to be. You've just kind of got to know what your choices are.
It's the only place I know of where you can go to fake Egypt and then go to fake medieval Europe and then go to fake Italy and then go see fake girl parts if you want to, but our wives don't allow us to do such things. But Vegas has whatever you want it to be. And none of it's real, but all of it's fun.
All of it is fun. I am making another trip in May. I'm going to get some content for the YouTube channel. And I'm looking forward to bouncing around to a few different hotels. I haven't stayed at my old friend, the Treasure Island, in a long time, and I am looking forward to that.
Well, I think that's going to be some good content coming out on the YouTube channel for that. But let's focus on today's content. We're going to be getting to the El Cortez in just a minute. But before we do, let's do the drink of the day now. I'm going to start by saying we had a completely different drink of the day planned. In our last trip in March, I hung out at the Smashed Pig and was introduced to a drink called the Trinidad Sour. It was beautiful. The version I tried to make last night was not, so we're going to hold that off till I get that down. And so today, instead, we're going to jump into old fashions. And Bill and I are both sipping on an old fashioned. We each built ours a little bit differently, which we'll get into in a minute. But let me give you some background. This is a legendary cocktail, the cornerstone for so many other drinks. The history on this goes back to the 18th or 19th century, depending on what source you believe. Conventionally, most of the time when we think of an old-fashioned, it's some version of whiskey, usually rye or bourbon, with bitters and simple syrup or sugar and possibly some fruit to stir a drink over ice. However, one of the older recipes from the 1860s starts with gin, and you can do any spirit as an old-fashioned. And it's really, if you do it with vodka, it's a great chance to taste your bitters and see what they're really like. So, with that said, Bill, how did you build your old-fashioned today?
So, I don't drink rye. It's not that I won't, it's that there's always choices I prefer. And if I'm drinking my bourbon neat or rocks, then I tend to get a wheated bourbon because I like that hint of sweetness that comes underneath it. Sometimes I'll even just drink a wheat whiskey instead because I like that note of sweetness without being like a woo girl college drink or something like that. Right. But in an old-fashioned, you're adding some of your own sweetener anyway, so I will tend to do a bourbon with a little bit of a higher rye content. Today, what I used was some Eagle Rare, which I enjoyed. Certainly, it's not that it's a really high rye bourbon. It's just higher rye than, say, Maker's Mark or something like that, right? I used that, but I started with some bitters, and I used Angostura bitters and then Angostura orange bitters. And I put in an orange peel, and if you just heard me say the word orange twice, I mean, that's right. I like the flavor of orange, right? Like orange makes me happy. I put in 2 Amarena cherries, and I put in a little bit of the extra syrup from the Amarena cherry jar. That's what I use as my sweetener. Sometimes I'll put in a brown sugar cube, but for today's sweetener, I just use that. I use extra cherry juice. I then used 2 shots of Eagle Rare, put in a big ice cube, and I don't tend to like my drinks quite as stiff as you do, so I kind of intentionally, I put in an extra ice cube, let them melt for just a minute. I enjoyed the cooling it down and the slightly thinner drink that produced, but this has been fantastic. I enjoy my drink very much.
So I've got an old-fashioned too, but I took a different approach. I started with the sugar cube, and I loaded it up with several shakes of Angostura bitters and bitter cube cherry vanilla bitters.
You use more bitters than I do.
I love bitters, which we were going to do the Trinidad Sour because bitters is actually the base spirit.
You're swimming bitters.
So I love bitters, and I like to muddle my bitters into the sugar cube first. I used 2 ounces of Redemption rye. It's the first time I've had this particular rye. It's a little rough around the edges. It's 92 proof, but perfect for making a cocktail. Then I gave that a good stir. I went with a large ice cube instead of your smaller ones because I like the dilution, but I like it to happen slow. I like the evolution of the drink. Stirred all of that and then topped it with a twist of orange. Now, I think the genius of the old fashioned is there's a million ways to make one. Some bartenders basically muddle a whole fruit salad at the bottom of the glass. You get oranges, you get cherries, all this stuff. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be, but it's always delicious.
Yeah, and I never do muddle my fruit. I will sometimes muddle my sugar cube if I'm using a sugar cube in it. But again, I spent 5 glorious years in college, and I'm pretty sure I got a degree at the end of that process. And I don't want drinks that remind me of college, and a lot of smashed fruit sitting at the bottom of my drink reminds me of some days that I'm not particularly proud of.
Yeah, and I agree, but normally when you're at a bar that does that, they're using something like Kentucky Deluxe anyway, so anything to mask the flavor of the bad product is worth it.
No, sir. If one is going to drink with one's pinky up, one does not drink Kentucky Deluxe. It's not a thing.
Yeah, even on a budget, I don't mess with JD. There are some bottom shelf whiskeys that I adore. KD is not one of them. Kentucky Deluxe is naughty in the sight of the Lord and should be banished.
If you ever see me drinking Kentucky Deluxe, that means I'm in trouble and I need help. Like, that is actively the plea. I was in a liquor store once in a nearby town. I saw somebody buying 2 handles of McCormick and argued that the price should actually be $1.12 cheaper. And that was McCormick vodka, right? But still, Kentucky Deluxe bourbon, they call it, and you should see my air quotes here. It's in the same territory. That means you've got a problem and you need to slow down.
Yeah, you're better off not drinking at all than drinking that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no need to kill the hope that way.
So let's move on to the El Cortez, where you and I both were able to stay over spring break a couple weeks ago. So what do you think, Bill?
So it's actually the second time I've stayed there, and I've been in the building a lot. And there's a lot I like about the property, right? It's got an interesting history. It had one of the less fortunate opening dates ever. It opened November the 7th of 1941, and precisely a month later, the United States got just a little bit busy for the next 4 or 5 years. But you can kind of feel the Vegas history in there. You can feel the Rat Pack walking through the space. Unfortunately, I'm not sure a lot of the decor has been updated since they were going through there in the 50s and 60s. There's some cool moments to it. It originally had, I want to say it was like a 59 rooms. That is now the original 47. I don't know where the other 12 rooms went. And they keep expanding. Like, they built a 15-story tower. I've stayed there. They built some rooms called the Pavilion, and we'll get to those later on when we're talking about rooms. But the short answer is please no. And they've also got some rooms across the street that I think they call cabana rooms. So it's kind of grown and added onto over the years. And to me, it's 2 very different places, right? It's a place to gamble where it is fantastic, and it is a place to stay where it is not. The best analogy I can think of is that the El Cortez is kind of like a rich man's girlfriend. It's absolutely a place that's a lot of fun to play with. It's just not where you want to stay for the long term.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the analogy I would have gone with, mostly because my wife is going to listen to this. But
I presume mine's not, so it's fine.
So my room, and you and I both stayed in the original 47 area of the hotel, but we had different classes of rooms. So my room overall was a mixed bag. I think they really captured that World War II era aesthetic really well. It's the kind of place my grandmother and grandfather would have thought of as fancy. And my room was immaculately clean, which was great. The bed was one of the most comfortable beds I've ever had in Vegas. The decor was spot on what they were shooting for. My complaints were that part of what you pay an amenity fee, they don't call it a resort fee, but an amenity fee. That includes having a mini fridge and a coffee maker in your room. Neither of mine worked. I reached out several times to the El Cortez staff, the housekeeping staff, the front desk staff. Everybody said, yeah, we'll get there and we'll fix it. They never did in 3 nights. So I feel like I didn't get everything I paid for. It was less expensive than most of the other options in town for the dates we were staying. So I can't complain too much. But yeah, it was an okay room. Certainly beat your brother-in-law Mark's room, which, those pavilion rooms look like.
I still haven't seen him since that last night. I'm You know what? I hope Mark's okay.
Every seedy crime movie in the 80s and early 90s, where either you have two bitter FBI agents in a trashy motel, or the criminal and his girlfriend are hiding in a trashy motel to get away from the cops. That's pretty much the pavilion rooms at El Cortez. They are frozen in that 80s, early 90s cheap hotel vibe. My room was way better than Mark's room.
So there are the four basic areas of the hotel. There's the tower, there's the original 47, there's the pavilion rooms, and there's the cabana rooms. Of those four, I have stayed in two. I've stayed in the tower in the original 47. I've obviously seen my brother-in-law's room over in the pavilion. Never stayed over in the cabana, but of those four, I'm pretty sure I'd stay in the original 47, because I'm with you. I actually kind of dug the decor in those rooms. They just redecorated those like a year or two ago. I actually watched a lot of the remodeling because my barber is there. Like, the best barber in the world is the Speakeasy Barber Shop, which is there on the second floor in the original 47. That's actually the first thing that ever got me into that hotel in the first place, and I will keep going there. But I like the decor in the original 47 rooms. The location is super convenient. And of the four options, it's actually the quietest, right? Like, you get the most peace and quiet when you go there. But the problem with staying at the El Cortez is every time you want to do something, somebody's got to like intellectually design the concept of stone tablets so they have something to chisel on for a while. Like, it takes 15 or 20 minutes to say things like, I'm so terribly sorry, I need some new towels. Like, it takes a long darn time to check in, even if there's only one or two people in front of you. And even if they wanted to add more staff, there's not space for them. And, like, people are typing furiously. It takes too long. Like, their processes are bad. My room was dirty. I have twice been checked into a room that wasn't clean when I got there. They took towels out of my room at one point and then just left them in the hallway overnight. So there's a lot I like about this hotel. I will absolutely visit there again. I don't know that I'll stay there again, because even though the rooms are nice and even though the rooms are inexpensive and it's a great location, the service experience is poor.
Yeah, I on balance, I agree with that, because we both had issues trying to get things done. And I don't like to complain as a rule. I've done enough jobs in retail and hospitality that I never want to come across as a Karen. But there were some things that I did have to go say, hey, this isn't quite right. And I try to be very polite in those situations. Maybe I should have been more assertive, but I went to multiple people. I was pretty clear. I didn't get resolution. I do want to give a shout out. There was a female bartender at the lobby bar who made some amazing martinis. She was great.
Which can be made with vodka.
Yeah, but gin is better. But that's another episode. And Leo at the valet, who also runs the event. Leo is my hero in Vegas. He's got more stories than you can imagine. None of them are really fit for public consumption, but all of them are hilarious. But other than Leo and that one bartender, the service ranged from mid-level to flat out, either incompetent or rude. And I hate to be that way, because service work is hard. And like, I always want to give the person in a service role the benefit of the doubt, because I've been there. But I overall, yeah, it was not, customer service is lacking at El Cortez.
Well, and like, the systems aren't great. Like, I had to change my room reservation a couple of times. There's no ability to do that online. You've got to call in, which I hate, right? It's harder, it takes longer, and all of that. It takes even once you reach the check-in counter, it takes 15 minutes to check in. And it's not like I'm trying to upgrade to the presidential suite at a different hotel. You know the room class, you know the room. Please give me the key and send me on my way.
Right.
I would like to start spending money.
Yeah, check-in was torture. So let's talk about some other things that may not have been so bad. And I'm going to move to food and drink. Now, I didn't get a chance to go to Siegel's. I know you did. But the thing that I did enjoy is outside of Ike's Bar, and unfortunately the bartender I had at Ike's Bar falls under that not great service. But the two ladies that were running the hot dog / coffee cart next to Ike's Bar, they saved my life every morning. There's good quality Italian coffee from Italy down there. I am a coffee snob. I really enjoyed my morning coffee, and the ladies that manned that were extremely friendly and funny, and they understood 7 in the morning in Vegas me and took care of me. So I was really thrilled with that. And that's really my only experience with non-alcoholic beverage or food under the building. What do you think about Siegel's?
So Siegel's 1941, they've technically got more than one restaurant because they've got like a Subway tucked away in the corner.
I'm not eating Subway in Vegas.
No, and they've got deals with a couple of restaurants across the street. But for practical purposes, they've got one restaurant in the hotel. It is Siegel's 1941. And Siegel's is the best breakfast in Vegas. We've actually got a whole separate video of it about it up on the Dine, Drink, Travel Vegas YouTube channel. But there are too few places that still do corned beef hash. And when I wake up in the morning in Vegas, what I mean by corned beef hash isn't some custom bespoke product, right? Like, I want you to take the corned beef hash out of a can, and I want you to griddle it until it's crispy. And then I want you to put 2-3 poached or fried eggs on top of it. They do poached eggs there. Serve it with hash browns because yet more starch. And it's just, I've eaten there twice. It is an excellent breakfast. So while I don't intend to stay there again, there are quite a few reasons. I will go back to the El Cortez. My barber is one, but Siegel's is another. Now, I don't know that I go there for lunch or dinner. I've never tried it. There's just nothing that appeals to me. Yeah, it's my favorite breakfast in town.
Yeah, I do hear that their prime rib is one of the top 10 prime ribs in Vegas, and it's a good price, but I can't validate that. I haven't tried it.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be some other choices. One of the other things that will continue to draw me back to the El Cortez is the gambling odds. It is the single best place to gamble in Vegas. Now, by best place to gamble, I don't necessarily mean comps. For one thing, if you do get comped, you're going to get comped at a hotel I don't particularly want to stay at, right? And for the other thing, they still use kind of an old manual system, and they're not particularly generous about it. Like, I literally get better comp deals at the Bellagio than I do at the El Cortez, and that makes no sense to me.
I don't know. I got an ice cream on a stick as a comp. That was weird.
I got one free room night here, whereas the Bellagio, I'm staying there for free, and they're giving me like some free room credit. Like I don't get it. The comps aren't good, but the gambling itself is actually great. Blackjack, every table pays 3-2. I don't think they've got a table in the place where blackjack pays 6-5. Video blackjack pays 3-2. Video blackjack allows you to double after a split. Like, they've got fantastic odds, and if you do it that way, you get your slot points, which allows you to go into various joints and get other things. So the gambling is exceptionally good. Now, you play video poker, which is a game I play when I want to have a drink with my buddy. How are the video poker odds there?
So not as good as they used to be. There used to be a bank of machines near Ike's Bar that had really good payback, and you could play anywhere from a quarter denomination up to $5 a hand. I've had good luck there in the past. The last time I was in El Cortez, not counting this March trip, but summer of 2022, an elderly woman either went into a coma or died across from me. And that bank of machines is now gone. I don't know if it's related to that. The video poker actually sitting at Ike's Bar. The payout tables are not particularly favorable, and they're not very generous with drinks in there. You've got to be betting at least $1 a hand, which is weird because they have another bank of machines nearby that you can bet a nickel a hand, and the floor walking servers will still let you get a free drink at those machines.
And I've had better luck than you have getting free drinks out of the, even they're sitting at Ike's Bar. One of the other gambling things I want to talk about there, though, is so when I've had enough drinks to be making bad choices, I will play slots for a while, and I've won multiple pretty decent jackpots there playing slots. Like, they've got the loosest slots in town. So while the El Cortez is not a place I want to stay again, I will absolutely go back there and gamble. It is a great place to gamble. Once you're done gambling, there are multiple good places to stumble out and have a drink.
Well, I do want to circle back real quick before we move to nearby. On video poker, because I brought up the nickel machine. So two great things about video poker at El Cortez, even though my favorite machines are gone and I didn't have a great time at Ike's Bar. Over near Ike's Bar, there's a bank of machines where you can play a nickel a hand. The pay tables aren't great, but if you're not experienced with video poker or you're not very good at it, at a nickel a hand, you can afford to sit there and play a long time until you get a sense of what wins or loses. Or sometimes if I just had 30 minutes to kill, but I didn't want to risk $100, I could throw $5 in that nickel machine and play for a long time and stretch it out, which is great. It's good for training, good for practice. Pay tables aren't great, but it's okay. I did find some great pay tables. There's 2 coin slot areas in El Cortez. There's a small one near Ike's Bar, and then there's another one off past the lobby. And in the one past the lobby, there were some older coin-driven video poker machines that actually had pretty good pay tables, not quite to give the player the advantage. I believe the return to the player is about 99.8%, which is really, really good if you play disciplined video poker. So yeah, it's not a bad place if you want to go gamble a little. You just need to be mindful of what machines you're on. Okay, so what's nearby? You brought up drinks. I think I know where you're going.
So I'm going to lots of places there. What's nearby? The one other thing I want to return to inside the hotel is the Speakeasy Barbershop inside the hotel is just a fantastic place to get a haircut. Now, what you need to know is do not expect to walk in and just get an appointment. They're going to be booked. You're going to want to book something at least a week or 2 in advance. But that is great. And they'll let you bring your drink up with you, and they will stop you mid-shave or mid-haircut, let you have another drink of your whiskey because they are caring people and they understand it's Vegas. You need to keep that buzz going. About location and what's nearby to drink, and we'll get to the spot you're talking about in just a second. But I want to talk about where it is in relation to the Fremont Street experience, because if you're looking at it on a map, it can look like it's a long way from the festivities of the Fremont Street experience. No, it's not. It's a block. It is a super easy walk. Like I've walked it in July when it's blazing hot. Not that it's fun, but like it's fine. It is. I treat it absolutely as an extension of the Fremont Street experience. And it is also next to a place called Container Park. Container Park has a series of different things. It's not where you want to go when you get drunk and rowdy because there's some kid-friendly things there. I mean, sometimes local families will bring their kids. So please don't go there if that's the kind of mood you're in. But they got a taco place there, Quinche Tacos, which reminds me very much of the tacos that I ate when I lived in Mexico City. But they got a bar called Oak and Ivy.
Yes, they do.
Oh, John, talk to him about that drink you asked him to make at Oak and Ivy.
So sitting at Oak and Ivy, I noticed a bottle of Laird's Bottled and Bond 100 Proof Apple Brandy, which is a really uniquely American spirit. And I got to talking to the bartender, and I said, you know what, why don't you riff on that bottle? And he came up with sort of a apple cinnamon old-fashioned type thing, very similar to a drink I've had there before when my wife and I made an October trip once, where they used pear and apple brandy and some other things. I really love that they have a unique collection of spirits, especially whiskeys and brandies, and that the bartender's not afraid to experiment. If you find nothing on the menu got your attention, but a bottle did, they'll make something out for you. They have fun doing it. They clearly are passionate about their craft. We will have a video coming out. It's going to encompass some footage from multiple trips in there because Bill and I have both made trips with each other on our own, me with my wife. Just a neat little bar.
So, and I've got a slightly different perspective than you do on Oak and Ivy, because of course they make phenomenal cocktails, right? Because of course they do. One of the things which, because I'm a whiskey guy, they've got all sorts of interesting whiskeys, which tend most of the time to be at a pretty reasonable price. So a lot of times what I will do is I'll just go in and I'll just kind of stare at bottles until my eyes land on something that looks new and interesting, which I have trouble getting here in the far reaches of Western Texas, right? I will order a rock shot of just some whiskey. Now, I've had cocktails there. They've all been great. But I kind of enjoy the whiskey selection in that tiny, tiny little restaurant or bar.
Yeah, and it's literally built in a shipping container, that's Container Park.
Now, you went to a different bar So tell them a little bit more about Smash Pig.
So while you were getting a haircut, which is a useless activity since I'm bald, I went into the Smash Pig, which is a gastropub in Fremont East. And again, one of the great things about our El Cortez is it straddles the connection between the Fremont Street experience and Fremont East. And by the way, Fremont East is amazing. There's a ton of great restaurants and bars. Lip-smacking foodie tours and finger-licking foodie tours both have food tours there. I highly recommend those. I know you haven't done one yet, but my wife and I have. But the Smashed Pig, which is not on the food tours, they do bistro-style American food, and they have a great cocktail program. And as I was in there, the bartender was making a drink for her manager called the Trinidad Sour, which is going to be on one of these episodes when I can get the code right. I'd never had one before, but I love bitters. And as they're talking back and forth, I said, you know what? Let me have one of those. And one turned into a couple, but the bartender there, she clearly knew her craft. Was really fun to talk to. It was the middle of the afternoon. They were almost dead. Really great experience. I want to go back. I want to do happy hour. I did get a snack there. I got a happy hour size fish and chips. Great food. So yeah, if you're down there and you're looking for something to do, Smash Pig, absolutely worth your time.
Yeah, and there are also a lot of places just up and down the Fremont Street experience. So I prefer being on the Strip to being downtown. The Strip is nicer. They've got shinier, prettier stuff there, and that makes me happy. However, there are some great places to drink right there up and down the Fremont Street experience. And while they are, an extra couple of blocks sometimes further away than what you're talking about, the Top of Binion Steakhouse is really good. And sometimes I enjoy sitting at their bar. Like, it's a beautiful place to sit and have a drink. On the YouTube channel, we've got a video about the Legacy Club, which is on the top of the Circa. That place is good to drink. I would say that I would go to Oscar's Steakhouse to drink at their beautiful bar, but why would I do that when I could just go to Oscar's and have a proper meal while also drinking?
Yes, and we're going to get to Oscar's a little bit later in the episode. And when we talk about distance on Fremont Street, now I haven't mapped it out to be sure, but going from Plaza on one end all the way down to El Cortez and Fremont East on the other, really, I would bet it's pretty much the same distance as going from the Bellagio side of Caesars to the entrance of the Mirage. So the distance of everything...
I was going to say the Mirage side of Caesars to the Bellagio, but the same analogy.
Same analogy, right. Yeah. When we talk about distance downtown, you can experience everything downtown in the same amount of walking that you would roughly do just to chew your way through all of Caesars. Yeah, so the scale down there versus the Strip.
No, you're right about the scale, but other scale things which happen downtown that I don't like is, I don't know, the 250, 300-pound, 64-year-old stripper or something, right? Like, there are things about downtown that look kind of sketchy to me.
Yeah, yes. But I think overall, and this will be a whole other episode too, I think on balance, you and I both agree that the Strip and downtown are both worth experiencing.
Absolutely.
I tend to gravitate towards downtown, although I'm ready for my next trip. My wife and I are going to be on the Strip in July at Park MGM, and we have a pool cabana rented at Caesars, and I'm looking forward to that. So mostly I'm a downtown guy. Sometimes I prefer the Strip. I think you're the other way around.
I am also, and I want to make sure our listeners understand, because you can't see our faces right now, and you're welcome for that. But John's wife is beautiful, and she's going to Vegas with his self, and none of us who know them understand why that's a real thing that's actually happening.
I may rarely get lucky at gambling, but I got very lucky at love, and I'm happy about it. So from happy news, we're going to go into some sad news. We just talked about places to drink downtown. Unfortunately, one of my favorite spots that I originally stumbled across from a Groupon deal. I know, Bill, as the high roller of the High Plains, you don't generally do Groupon, but I'm cheap and I do. Bangor Brewing closed its door. Today, as we record, is Sunday, April 2nd. They closed their doors at midnight, Friday the 31st. handcrafted beer right in the heart of the Fremont Street experience. I'm sad. Bill, what were your thoughts on Banger Brewing? You've been in a couple.
So I enjoyed it. It was a lovely spot to drink, and they had very good beer. But the problem is that I am Episcopalian. The Book of Common Prayer requires me to have whiskey or vodka at all times. Beer slows that down. And so it's not the sort of place I wanted to go.
So I do think we found a suitable substitute, and you came up with this. Chicago Brewing inside the Four Queens, which also has delicious house-made beer and a full bar and gambling, which those
and
last
cigars,
two things.
and
And
cigars. Cigars.
So that's three things: cigars, gambling, and hard liquor that my friends at Banger Brewing could not support. So while I'm sad that Banger Brewing is closed, I think I accept Chicago Brewing as a reasonable, Siri, we didn't want to hear from you, a reasonable alternative.
Yeah, so Chicago Brewing Company is good. I will trust you on the beer having been good. And it's not that it's the best mixed drinks in the world, because it's not, but they are perfectly serviceable mixed drinks. If your buddies want to have beer, it's just kind of a comfortable atmosphere. And it's the only cigar lounge downtown. And that's something I really enjoy doing in Vegas. I might only have 3 or 4 cigars a year, but when I go to Vegas, it tends to be that top.
Yeah, and they do have decent video poker. Now, the bar at the Four Queens has a video poker machine that actually favors the player if you play perfect strategy. The return to player is over 100%. That's not the case upstairs in the Chicago Brewing Company. I don't remember the actual odds, but we did post a YouTube short about it. They were decent odds in the 98, 99% range. And I really enjoy playing video poker there. Anytime I'm downtown, I think that's now a must stop for me. I need to kill an hour in there and let them have some of my money. Okay, so some more Vegas news. By the way, the bid on Banger Brewing closing, we need to cite our sources. I caught that from the Vital Vegas Twitter feed, which is Scott Rayoban. I don't know how to say Scott's last name. I hope I bump into him. He's a big video poker player too. But also the 360 Vegas podcast had that news. So now we'll move on. The Grand Bazaar shop out in front of what was Bally's and is now becoming the Horseshoe. Parts of that are being demolished for 2 new venues, one of them being Blake Shelton's All Red. We get this news from both Vital Vegas and Travel Ruby's YouTube channel. Bill, what are your thoughts on the Grand Bazaar? And I know you have a Horseshoe trip coming up. So what are your thoughts on the Horseshoe?
So I haven't been in the Horseshoe nor the Grand Bazaar shops in years now. Like, it has been a long time. I tend to not like the mega theme restaurants. So I listen to Blake Shelton. I like him as an artist, but I can envision in my mind what the Blake Shelton's Old Red is going to be. My guess is it's going to replace the former Toby Keith restaurant that was somewhere in the area, who I also like good artist, but kind of schlocky, overpriced places to drink. It's not a place, nothing that you're describing is where I tend to want to spend most of my time in Vegas.
And I agree with that, although I don't listen to as much country as I used to. I know it's shocking for a Texan, but I like my country off the beaten path. I like Texas country, Robert Earl Keen, Cody Canadian and The Departed, that sort of thing. I'm not big on top 40 country, but I do think Vegas needs more country music venues. I just don't know that it's for me. I would rather listen to the 80s cover bands at Carnival Court, which some of them are better than others. But I'd rather go catch some dad rock and cheaper cocktails there, I think, or head down to the Fremont Street Experience. But I am a sucker for live music, and I'm sure at some point I will be drinking cheap beer and Jack Daniels, listening to some cheesy country at Blake Shelton's. I'm sure that happens.
I don't think you will, right? Because those named entertainer sort of restaurants, you're not going to be drinking cheap anything. What you're going to be doing, you're going to be drinking cheap beer, but they're going to charge too much for it. It's, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm a married man. I'm used to being wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it working out that way.
Well, and you may be right. I'm hoping Blake, he's from Oklahoma. He knows something about poverty. But if you're right, then I'll just keep drinking those $2 Lone Stars over at Gillies at TI, which scratches the same itch for me.
And is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah. All right. So we've covered the Horseshoe. Another one, and this is going back to our downtown conversation. So coming from On the Corner of Main Streets podcast, which, by the way, is produced by the general manager at the Plaza Hotel, which is my favorite place to stay downtown, Jonathan Jostle and his team. If you want some inside Vegas, because we are not Vegas insiders, that podcast is the ultimate for Vegas insiders. They and Vital Vegas have been given updates on the addition of Pink Donuts, the Carousel Bar out in front of Oscars, and we got to see the construction for both of those, and outdoor dining for Oscars. So, Bill, what are your thoughts on these projects? And I know you especially will have Oscars thoughts.
So, I saw the Carousel Bar being constructed, and that is absolutely a place where I'm going to want to drink. Oscars is the best steakhouse in Vegas, y'all. I have lived in and eaten steak in the United States and Mexico and Nigeria. I've traveled to Japan and Germany and Indonesia. I have been all over the world. I've eaten some exceptionally good steaks. Oscars is my favorite steakhouse in the world. It's probably actually as good as the steak I can make at home, and I make really good steak. The outdoor patio area, I think that God made air conditioning because he wants us to be happy. And it's Vegas, right? Like, it gets even hotter than it does here in Western Texas. So I think the outdoor patio area will be a lot of fun for like the 2 months a year where the weather supports it. I'm just not sure it's a place that I wind up going a lot.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think on this trip we made in March, I would have been very tempted by that outdoor seating. I've been in October, same thing. Definitely in the summertime or in the winter, because Vegas gets cold in the winter. The desert can get cold, and it does. I would want to be inside. I will say this about Oscars. To me, Oscars is everything I want in Las Vegas. It feels like every Vegas movie I grew up watching. The food is on point. The service is on point. The connections to Oscar Goodman and all of the mob stories that go with it are phenomenal. The staff is just amazing. And I think the staff at Plaza in general, I've never had bad service at the Plaza. They seem to go above and beyond. I think these are all good additions to the Plaza. I want to see them all, but I am with you. I don't think I do that outdoor dining very often.
Yeah, no, probably not. But isn't there at least one other big piece of news coming up that's connected to downtown?
So, well, yeah, and connected to Texas. So Texas's own Tillman Fertitta of the Golden Nugget downtown, or if you live in Texas, like all of the restaurants, because Landry, Saltgrass, yada, yada, yada.
Landry's owns the world.
Yes, they do. And by the way, budget Vegas hack, if your local Sam's Club sells Landry's restaurant gift cards, you can routinely get a $100 gift card for $80 at Sam's Club. That gives you 20% off food, and they will take it at all of the restaurants in the Golden Nugget.
Who uses gift cards in Vegas?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
You should.
Okay? Don't judge. There's no judgment in Vegas.
Yeah, but we're not in Vegas.
Okay.
Can there be judgment about Vegas?
Fine. Knock yourself out. I don't care.
Continue your point.
So, yeah, you go ahead and pay an extra $20 for your meal, Bill. I'm not going to do that. I'm not giving them. They're going to take more of my money than I want them to begin with. If I could save $20 to eat at one of their restaurants at Chart House, I'm going to do it. Okay, but all of that aside, over where the Hawaiian Marketplace, also known as the most wasted space on the Las Vegas Strip, also known as the place you're most likely to be accosted by a really sketchy person, they're going to demolish that and put up a 42-story, 2420 room casino and resort, roughly the size of the Cosmo, directly across the street from the Cosmo. And according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, not my favorite newspaper, but according to them, Mr. Fertitta or Fertitta or whatever, he now has approval to build this thing. Bill, what do you think about bringing the Golden Nugget vibe to the Strip?
So I stayed in the Golden Nugget last year. Those videos on our YouTube channel wind up getting a lot of hits, and I really wanted to like the Golden Nugget because it presents itself as being a premier property, right? And it's still got a spa, They've got some pretty decent spaces to eat. It turns out, though, I just don't like the Golden Nugget that much because it's trading on a reputation of what it may have been 30 or 40 years ago without having really updated much. The rooms are nice, right? You can get some good deals. Their comps are actually pretty darn generous. And the Golden Nugget has a great pool, but the gambling odds kind of suck. It's crowded all the time. I don't really have a favorite hangout bar there. So in terms of this new project on the Strip, I mean, maybe I'd love to get into the loyalty ecosystem of a hotel chain that have properties both places, right? Like, I think that'd be the real win here. But the Golden Nugget I'm with you, and I think you're right? Like, the Plaza is the best place downtown. The Golden Nugget, I don't particularly care for. Like, I like it more than El Cortez. It's not my favorite. So I will go into this new place when it's built. But I'm less hopeful than you are, I think.
Well, let me put it this way, because he does have an elite hotel in downtown Houston and some unique hotel properties in addition to the restaurants. I think the opportunity here might be for him to rebrand the Golden Nugget a little bit. My biggest gripe with the Golden Nugget is while Landry's and Tillman's Company have absolutely put their DNA on the food and beverage program in the building. And I'm not going to eat at Saltgrass in Vegas. I got one less than a mile from my house. But I do like that there's a Saltgrass there, because if you don't have one in your town, it's let me put it this way.
Vic and Anthony's. You want Vic and Anthony's instead.
I will say this about Saltgrass. It's the steakhouse Outback wishes it was.
True.
For a chain steakhouse, it's pretty good, and it's affordable. And if you're in Vegas and you don't have a Saltgrass, do it. The rest of the property feels like a museum to the ghost of Steve Wynn's presence. Maybe while he builds this new place, he'll refresh the Nugget a little bit and give it a Texas attitude. And let's make the Nugget something new instead of a holdover. To me, the signage in there, it feels like what it is, the predecessor to the Mirage, which it is.
It is.
And it's frozen in time. Maybe while he builds the new thing on the Strip, we can get a refresh at the Nugget. Okay, we're running out of time. So, Bill, what's new on the YouTube channel and what's coming up?
So, for our listeners who don't know, which you can't because this is the first episode of this podcast, John and I both have full-time jobs. We got excited about our trips to Vegas. We wanted to share that. So we started the YouTube channel. We started this podcast. We're starting a few other things. But on Dine, Drink, Travel Vegas, on our YouTube channel, we make trips every couple of months to Vegas. And we tend to be pretty in-depth with those trips. What we've got coming out over the next couple of months is a lot of content related to this trip that we just made downtown. Now, what we do there is we tend to do fairly short videos, right? Like, most of them tend to be 5 or 10 minute long videos. But things like, here's what this class of hotel room talks about or looks like. Here's what this restaurant looks like. Here's what we did or didn't enjoy eating, right? That sort of thing. That's what we do there. I'm going to make another trip in May. And this one I'm going to be by myself, which means I'll wind up getting a whole lot more content than I do sometimes on our group trips. But on the May trip, I'm going to stay at the Horseshoe, and I'm going to stay at the Bellagio, and I'm going to wind up staying one night at the Treasure Island. So we will have a whole lot of news there. But folks, we have been up and down the Strip. We've been all through downtown. We're going to start taking a few trips later on this year where we are going, where we're going to some of the off-strip and non-downtown properties. So that's what we got coming up. And one of the things I think we really specialize in there is good places to have a drink.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Dine, Drink, Vegas. If you like what you heard here, remember to subscribe to this podcast and keep an eye. We try to put up a new episode every 2 to 3 weeks. Also, check us out on YouTube at Dine, Drink, Vegas. You can also check out our sister travel at Dine, Drink, Travel Cruises, where we discuss news and reviews on cruises traveling out of Galveston, Texas. You can catch us on Twitter or Facebook at Dine, Drink, Travel, and you can catch me at Dine, Drink, John on Twitter or username Dine, Drink, Vegas on Reddit. Remember, have fun. fun and safe travels. We'll see you next time.